Good morning on this beautiful Mother's Day Sunday. We are so glad that you've joined us today. I'm Martha Sinkula, and I will be your service leader. Welcome to the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist congregation. As I look out in the sanctuary, I really miss seeing all of you. And as more and more of us become fully vaccinated, hopefully we will be able to resume in-person services soon. But in the meantime, take a few minutes and try to connect with someone that you haven't talked to for a while. Our speaker this week is Dennis Reynolds, and he will be available for an after-service Zoom discussion. Every Sunday check-in is at 11:15, and our conversation begins at 11:30. And if you miss the after-service discussion, they are recorded just like our services, and so you can view them anytime on our YouTube channel. Services are generally uploaded on Saturday nights. In addition to services and discussions, we also have meditations and interviews. There's a lot to check out. We thank Michael Wheeler and Lucy Swangham for their work on producing these productions every week. Thank you. Well done, folks.
As chalice lighting this morning to honor Mother's Day and the power of nurturing love embodied within it, I want to share a part of a Buddhist metta prayer that my wife Suzanne and I recite during our regular meditation practice. May all beings be happy and at their ease. Let none deceive another, nor despise any being in any state. Let none by anger or ill will wish harm to another. Even as a mother watches over and protects her child, her only child, so with a boundless mind must one cherish all living beings, radiating friendliness over the entire world, above, below, and all around.
Our call to worship begins with these opening words from Lord Sachs, who was the former chief rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregation of the Commonwealth. Science takes things apart to see how they work. Religion puts things together to see what they mean.
Where are we going?
I invite you now into a time of contemplation and shared meditation. Settle in, sit in a way that's comfortable for you and allows for maximum breath. Usually that means legs uncrossed. They often talk about straight back but loose front so that the breath can flow in and out, because that's what we're going to do is we're going to focus deeply on the breath. Just breathing in deeply and noticing the feel of breath in nose and throat and lungs and belly. In and out. Feeling the going in and the going out. In and out together. As you follow the sounds of the bell into your breathing.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Our reading today is by Mary Oliver, Buddha's Last Instructions. Make of yourself a light, said the Buddha before he died.
I think of this every morning as the east begins to tear off its many clouds of darkness, to send up the first signal. a white fan streaked with pink and violet, even green.
An old man, he lay down between the two salad trees, and he might have said anything, knowing it was his final hour.
The light burns upward. It thickens and settles over the fields.
Around him, the villagers gathered and stretched forward to listen.
Even before the sun itself hangs detached in the blue air, I'm touched everywhere by its ocean of yellow waves.
No doubt he thought of everything that had happened in his difficult life.
And then I feel the sun itself as it blazes over the hills like a million flowers on fire. Clearly, I'm not needed, yet I feel myself turning into something of inexplicable value.
Slowly, beneath the branches, he raised his head. He looked into the faces of that frightened crowd. Reverend Dennis came to the ministry after a 30-year career as a preschool teacher and administrator at the University of Oregon. He has since retired to Eugene after serving churches in Oregon and in Washington State, and he was also a hospital chaplain. He's been an activist both locally and globally. He believes that the most powerful sermons are often those written with a religious text in one hand and a current news source in the other. He enjoys lifelong learning and the practice of crafting sermon. Our congregation enjoys his wisdom and wit and his ability to share his authentic self with us. Dennis?
As noted in the blurb that was sent out about this morning's sermon, I have a bumper sticker on the back of my car that reads, "Don't believe everything you think." The quote is attributed to the Unitarian Universalist preacher and writer Robert Fulghum, and according to the internet, to a number of other sources. Who knows who came up with the notion first, but it's a notion from Buddhist teachings about not getting too caught up in thought, particularly in difficult times. And this has been a difficult time, a difficult year, and things are not yet turning around as we had hoped they might. Just when we thought that vaccines would bring at least a winding down of COVID restrictions, a current increase in case numbers here in Oregon has turned that around. Some say the problem is the new variant. Some point to more relaxed attitudes about safety protocols. Some say both, and some don't believe the data. Some say vaccination hesitancy is a problem, and some say it's all of the above. Now, I don't want to believe the current Oregon numbers, and yet I see no logical reason for doctors and hospitals and county health officials and the Oregon Health Authority to offer us and decision makers anything other than the best information they can provide. Also, political divisiveness has certainly not lessened in any real way. The events in the larger world can so frustrate and infuriate me and fill me with despair. Sometimes I just want to weep for those who have suffered from the disease and economically. It's hard sometimes to just keep on keeping on. I don't know what to think about all of it. In such times, I find solace in seeking deeper answers for why things are the way they are and strategies that can help me survive such times and to stay engaged through them. Sometimes such deep answers, the kind I can really hold on to, and my simple acceptance of what is, do not come from my intellect and my reason, but from within, from something we often call faith. I find solace and deep grounding in my Unitarian Universalist faith and from the practices of seeking deeper meaning that many of us have in common. We may seek in different ways, follow different paths, if you will, but this faith is filled with seekers. I, like most, if not all of you gathered with us this morning, am a seeker. I often enjoy the pleasure of finding things out. I've spent my whole life listening for that voice within, which, though often still and small, seeks understanding and deeper meaning and comfort. Voice still and small, deep inside hall, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still you'll remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears through all the years, singing. Sometimes I have listened quietly and patiently for such a voice. But more often than not, I am actively seeking and probing and questioning. It seems that I've always been that way. My mom reported that from the earliest days of my learning to talk, I would barrage her with a seemingly endless stream of questions. Why, Mommy? What if, Mommy? Why, Mama? Why do I need to clean my plate? Why do I need good food to grow? Why does the sun go away at night? What if it didn't and it was always daytime? Why do I need to share with my little sister? When she tired of my questioning, my mom would swish me out of doors and perhaps find some answers out there on my own. Sometimes out there, I found something quiet, something ineffable, something deeply meaningful. My heading for the woods became more focused as a teenager, for that's when I became not a mere seeker, but a hunter, specifically a deer hunter. Hunting was more than a sport for our family. Venison made up a significant part of the meat we ate through the winter. We took our annual family hunting trip the first week of doe season. We were after meat more than the fine trophy that the antlers of a buck might provide. My dad taught me a lot about hunting. I learned how to read sign, to analyze tracks, to attend to wind patterns, and to predict the routes the deer would likely follow to reach water and forage and secure places to bed down in midday. He also taught me a number of different approaches to trying to bag a deer. Dad's favorite approach was to sit a stand, which meant positioning yourself upwind of an open place where you thought deer would likely pass, and then attentively waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting some more. Sometimes he'd send my brother and me out to beat the bushes and hopefully send deer his way. I was not much of a stand sitter. It was cold and rather boring. I much preferred going out and actively seeking the deer. It was mostly the men and boys of the family who went hunting, but when my younger sister Lori came of age, the feminist she was becoming pestered Dad to let her join us on the hunting trip. On the first day hunting, she and I were perched with our rifles on the tailgates of the family's Jeep as Dad was driving slowly up a ridge on a morning road hunt. A small herd of deer crossed the road, so Dad stopped. I helped Lori get down from the Jeep and then up the road bank into a clearing where we saw the deer. I noticed a buck, a 4-point with a big rack leading the small herd. I turned to my sister and I whispered, "He's mine." When I raised my rifle, my hand shook. I was experiencing what in hunting jargon is called buck fever. My over-anticipation, my desire were getting the best of me. I fired and I missed. And then I fired again and I missed again. By then the deer were in the brush. Lori was at that moment wise enough to play it safe and stayed quiet. Her future chastising me would come much later, and it has echoed through the years. I still hear about that one. It seems that my longing and desire for a trophy had got in her way, and it got in my way too. Life, and especially a life of actively seeking, can be like that. When we want it so much, our anxious longing can get in the way of finding serenity and calm and a focus that sharpens our aim, be it in archery or deer hunting or diligent, careful study or in silent, contemplative meditation practice. This is true in whatever way of hunting and seeking we practice, be it in actively going after knowledge or the alternative approach of sitting in the right place at the right time, open to what may come. Each approach can be effective, and when we employ both, our odds of success are greater. Academia has tended to create very separate categories of the different ways of seeking understanding. Understanding human behavior, for example, is divided into sociology, anthropology, psychology, human development, decision science, political science, and sometimes even more. Knowledge and ways of seeking are divided into separate disciplines, yet are they really so separate? For many years, our culture has divided different strategies of knowledge seeking. The roots of that division go deep into our history. The writer and Buddhist teacher Wes Nesker says, "It seems as though the earth was divided according to the two hemispheres of the brain. Asia was assigned the right hemisphere, and its great sages turned their attention inward, seeking truth through intuition and receptive quietude. Perhaps not unlike hunting by setting a stand." Nisker continues, "In Europe and the Mediterranean, the left hemisphere, the search for truth turned outward and became a process of deconstructing and analyzing the world, relying on more aggressive powers of reason. Beating the bushes, actively hunting for knowledge." He continues, "The Asian wisdom tradition tends to think more holistically, while the West was more interested in making distinctions. In our times," he reports, "modern communications has served as a corpus callosum, connecting the two hemispheres and revealing an astonishing agreement about the laws of nature and the structures of deep reality. Taken together, we now have what we might be called the full brain approach." I find his description of a sort of a full brain intriguing. The corpus callosum, by the way, is the area in the midbrain where the two hemispheres are connected, making sort of a neural crossroads within our minds. I want to reference briefly this morning some notions that the neuroanatomist Jo Bolte Taylor offered in her book, Stroke of Insight, which I recommend highly. It's a short, profound book. Bolte Taylor had a massive hemorrhage on the left side of her brain, and her outwardly oriented, analyzing and categorizing brain became increasingly less functional. For a time, her more intuitive and inwardly focused, and what some might call spiritually sensitive, bright right brain became dominant. As Bolte Taylor described it later, she nearly lost the ability to determine how to act to save herself. yet she was not sure she cared, because she was in a place that she called La La Land, a place of bliss and harmony where she felt a sense of deep connection to all existence. A place where if she had stayed there and the left brain hadn't helped her out, she might not have survived. We Western thinkers have been operating in split brain mode, one side or the other, for some time. For many, especially those who have benefited by left brain systems, which I suggest are not merely part of an east-west left brain, right brain dichotomies, but have become a hierarchy. We have established a sense of what kind of thinking modes of thought we deem superior, and often it's rational analysis. Let's look at the history of some of this compartmentalization. As the writer and religious scholar Thomas McFarland describes it, for the past 300 years, science and religion were viewed as antagonistic opposites. Parallels between Eastern religion and modern physics challenge this notion and mark the first signs of a profound transformation in the way we investigate and understand reality. McFarland offers in the preface of a book he edited titled Einstein and the Buddha, the Parallel Sayings, two statements about space and emptiness. The first one, if there is only space or sun or planets in it, then space loses its substantiality. Or the other description, the concept of space detached from any physical content does not exist. These two statements are from Einstein and the Buddha, and for now I'd rather not tell you which one is which, because for me, they are both expressions of a shared notion that space requires content to exist. Such expressions of similar viewpoints emerging from both the realm of spirit and faith and from the world of rational analysis and science are a linking of the all too often separate processes of our analytical left brain and our intuitive right brain. About 2,500 years ago, the West experienced what some have seen as the birth of rational thought. The mathematician and philosopher Pythagoras is credited as being father of the concept that all reality could be mathematically oriented and ordered and could be measured and understood in the terms of numbers and their relationships. This, McFarland affirms, is at the root of the scientific approach to understanding reality. During the Renaissance, Pythagoras' notion was linked to experimental method and science as we know it was born. The split and sometimes animosity between science and religion emerged when scientific thinkers like Copernicus and Galileo made discoveries that were at odds with the religious dogma of their time. Such science was seen by faith leaders as heresy. Meanwhile, narrow-minded reliance on unquestioned faith was and continues by many to be seen as foolish superstition. Such an antagonistic division between science and faith is challenged by findings in modern quantum physics that question previous notions about the readily measurable and categorizable world. Perhaps it's time we recognize that there is enough space, or perhaps enough emptiness in the universe that we can make room for a combination of seeking methodologies. Using both left brain-centered analysis and science and the contemplative approaches of the right brain, to use, as both Bolte Taylor and Nesker suggest, to use our whole brains. The eminent physician David Bones suggested that what is needed is for all people to give attention to this habit of fragmentary thought, to be aware of it, and thus bring it to an end. Humanity's approach to reality may then be whole, and so the response will be whole. As Unitarian Universalists, we have covenanted to affirm and promote not only a set of principles, but we also note that our living tradition we share draws from many sources. Amongst those we list a commitment to humanist teachings, which counsels us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warns us against idolatries of the mind and spirit, and direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Not reason or direct experience, but both. I find when I quiet my left brain and rely less exclusively on my intellect, then I'm open to new and different experiences that shape my worldview and open my mind to new possibilities, such as the notions of emptiness that the Buddha expressed as, if there is only empty space with no suns or planets in it, then space loses its substantiality. Or as Einstein expressed it, the concept of space detached from any physical content does not exist. Quiet meditation practice, creating mental space free of content, has become an increasingly important part of my life. For some, a quiet sit is not a good fit. That used to be true for me. So, if a walk in the woods is better for you, do that. Some practice yoga, or Tai Chi, or Qigong, or Sufi dance. Hindu chanting and mindful running are active forms of practice, as can be sailing, or rowing, or knitting. For some, music, be it singing or playing or mindfully listen, are profound contemplative practices. I was surprised to discover that when I am fit enough, I find a rowing machine a good place to practice, silencing my thinking, my analyzing mind for a bit. Just as I row back and forth, I think less, and different things emerge as I look inward. We do need science, especially in these times, where some might invite us to seek truths that are more convenient, and we need the contemplation that emerges in spiritual practices and in religious community. We need for our philosophers and our epidemiologists and scientists to talk to each other. We need to use both hemispheres of our brains more fully. In a sermon titled A Tough Mind and a Tender Heart, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. advised, there may be a conflict between soft-minded religionists and tough-minded scientists, but not between science and religion. Their respective worlds are different and their methods are dissimilar. Science investigates, religion interprets. Science gives humanity knowledge, which is power. Religion gives people wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion mainly with values. The two are not rivals, they are complementary. He continued, the great challenge is to move out of the mountain of practical materialism and move on to another and higher mountain, which recognizes somehow that we must live by and toward the basic ends of life. We must move on to that mountain which says in substance, what doth it profit anyone to gain the whole world of means, airplanes, televisions, electric lights, and lose in the end the soul? We need to engage in fuller, more inclusive conversations with each other and find quiet times just to be in solitude and sacred science. Just being present. Just breathing. We need to utilize our whole brain, our full capacities, our deepest compassions, so that we are grounded and able to bring greater understanding and greater love and deeper compassion to a bruised and hurting world. May it be so. Our closing words of benediction are from the poet Jalaluddin Rumi. What is praised is one.
So the one is praised too, many jugs being poured into a huge basin.
All religions, this singing one song.
The differences are just illusion and vanity.
Sunlight looks different on this wall than it does on that wall, and a lot different on the other one, but it is still one light.
We have borrowed these clothes, these time and space personalities from a light, and when we praise and worship, we pour them back in.
Amen. Salam. Shalom. And blessed be.